Good morning. I think I'm far enough away from the taco truck. If you didn't know, on Friday we have been giving out tacos. I'm trying to stay further away so I don't accidentally video someone who didn't want to be videoed. But since we're here at the church and we're doing some church-like activities, feeding people that might be hungry, I thought this would be a perfect time to record a brief sermon for you, whatever day you end up watching it. This is posting on a Sunday. If you wanted to know, we still have some fun updates about what exactly is going on in the life of Shelton Naz. If you didn't hear last week's sermon, we basically have all this new policy we're having to follow. We have all these crazy new restrictions and rules, and we're still genuinely trying to sort through what it looks like to continue in some sort of new normal with all of this coronavirus considerations in place. It's not necessarily anything we're choosing or wanting to do. It is just the reality of the situation. There's a whole lot of moving pieces here. There's a whole lot of concern for not spreading a virus, to take precautions, to self-sacrificingly love other people well by not giving them something we might not know that we have. But then there's also genuine legal ramifications to all of this. So for us, for this morning's mini sermon video Netflix thing from Pastor Josiah, I wanted to spend some time on something very, very simple that we still can do despite all of the differences of opinions that we all genuinely have about whether this coronavirus should be taken seriously or not, whether or not you will or won't wear a mask, whether or not this, that, or the other is something that we should be concerned about. A couple weeks ago, I was talking about legacy, about what we as the church will be known for, and I was challenging us to not be known on our opinions of mask wearing. We're going to recommend that you do that when you come at any of these events where you step out of your car or enter into this building, whenever that might be the case. But in the meantime, we can leave a legacy that is much more what we feel Christ has called us to leave. And time again, this parable keeps coming into mind, particularly with coronavirus, but also with all that is going on with these protests, with Black Lives Matter. Such a time for division and for frustration and for arguments to spin off, where if you say this, then obviously you think this, that, and the other, where we just get all bent out of shape because we're being divided one against the other. Where if I say Black Lives Matter, which for the record, I think Black Lives Matter, then suddenly that means I hate all cops, but I don't. I don't hate all cops. I think that what happened to George Floyd was an atrocity. It was a murder. It was terrible, and I think there is something to be said about the increased amount of black men and women, Breonna Taylor and all these other cases that we keep hearing about. There's something to be said about that. There's some sort of unjust situation that needs to be addressed, but at the same time, I know cops personally that they're good. They're good people that genuinely love other people. They want to serve and stand for justice, but they're being asked to do never-ending thankless work. They're going and trying to protect other people. They're not being able to take days off because there's so much going on. So out of a desire to encourage us to be united, to remember that our call is to love others well, to love our neighbors as ourselves, and we're doing that today with the tacos. I think it's maybe important to love neighbors, and what a better way to do it than giving away free tacos. It's my favorite way of loving other people, is sharing tacos. But genuinely, what can we do to continue into this unknown, to be the church, despite all of our personal preferences may be in jeopardy? And this parable keeps coming to mind. This is out of Matthew chapter 18, and it's verses 10 through 14, and is followed by a particularly convicting passage that I think I will add in your sermon companion if you have that open as well. It's called the parable of the lost sheep. Be careful that you don't look down on these little ones. I say to you that their angels in heaven are always looking into the face of my Father who is in heaven. What do you think? If someone had 100 sheep and one of them wandered off, wouldn't he leave the 99 on the hillside and go and search for the one that wandered off? If he finds it, I assure you that he is happier about having that one sheep than about the 99 who didn't wander off. In the same way, My Father who is in heaven doesn't want to lose one of these little ones. Immediately following this passage, it might be interesting to note that Jesus goes into this. What happens if we sin against one another? What happens if there's a disagreement? What happens if there's division? What happens if we just get generally mad at each other? And I call it the Matthew 18 rule. It's something to be considering right now, because there's plenty of clique isolation, hang out with only people you agree with going on in the world today. But this passage, it's timely for a couple of reasons. For reasons of social justice, because as a denomination, we are called to stand against oppressive systems, to oppose racism, to stand for justice. But aside from those protests, we're also called to care for the least of these, for the most vulnerable. So in both cases, this parable is very, very timely, because what it says is, sure, 99% of this herd is fine, but 1% isn't. Whatever the case may be, maybe that 1% is a minority. Maybe that 1% is a vulnerable population. Maybe that 1% is a police officer. Maybe that 1% is that person you just genuinely don't like. But the shepherd went and saved that one and rejoiced over being able to rescue that one from whatever issue they were facing. As the church, though, we're more comfortable with worrying just for the 99, for those that haven't done the thing to get themselves in trouble and lost and separated from the rest of the flock. We're more interested in, oh, we all agree, so who cares what anybody else thinks? All that's gonna do is further isolate us from the rest of the world. Jesus made it clear the shepherd risks leaving the 99 to themselves to go and track down that one, because Jesus doesn't have favorites. Because despite what we sometimes think and how we act, we aren't preferred to other people. Jesus doesn't think, oh, because you voted this way, because you have this certain skin type, because you're this age, because you're this gender, because you think this, that, or the other, I like you more than that person. It's never been how Jesus operated. So Jesus doesn't give in to these sort of demands of, well, it better be this way, Jesus, otherwise I'm leaving. And neither should the church or pastors in the church. But genuinely, this parable is so significant for the here and now, because it ties into what we've already been talking about with Paul. It ties into what we've been talking about with Easter, with all these different things that the church is called to love. That we are called to go to great lengths to help maybe just that one person who may be in need. That we should care about that one person who is suffering as if we ourselves are suffering. That if one person is affected, it's really easy to turn a blind eye and not care and say, well, I'm okay. But that's not what Jesus is modeling in this parable. He is saying that the lives of the 99 were affected because of the lives of the one mattering. That this is important. That we can be united in the cause to be the ambassadors Christ has called us to be, to bear witness to who Jesus is by loving well. And sometimes loving well looks like denying yourself. Sometimes it looks like not speaking that opinion in a very rude and derogatory way. Sometimes it means maybe just listening. Even if the person who is speaking is someone that you just don't agree with on any level whatsoever. Perhaps denying self, following Jesus, being the witness Christ has called us to be, means making sacrifices because we actually are okay enough to go without certain things. That perhaps as a church, what we've decided to do is to take some of the money that we could set aside for facility maintenance or for this or that or the other, and instead just offer to help kids eat food who might otherwise, because schools are closed, not get the proper nutrition for a variety of reasons. And sure, we could go into all of the different bureaucratic things that people go into and talk about, well, should those parents have their kids? Those parents are bad parents, this, that, or the other. But it's genuinely simpler to just feed kids that are hungry, So in what ways, and this is where I'm gonna end it. This is gonna be short and sweet. My battery's gonna die. I've been trying to video. It's a hot day. We're feeding tacos to kids. What way can we simply be a church that God calls us to be, bearing in mind this parable where the shepherd left for that one? That one was important enough for that shepherd to pause everything else and say, you know what, that one needs saving. So I'm gonna go and find it because I care about that one. And I also care about the 99, but we're in this together. So I ask you, what can you set aside? Maybe it's an opinion, maybe it's some sort of thought that you feel like someone needs to hear that you disagree with. Or maybe simply it's just, I want to help feed children, I want to help young people that are pregnant get the care they need, which is another ministry we're going to start inviting you to participate in soon in partnership with CareNet. Maybe there's just numerous opportunities that we can continue to explore in this new, unknown COVID-19 post-pandemic church atmosphere, where we can still live into this gospel message of being who Christ has called us to be, of bearing witness to who he is. In the meantime, we continue to strive to be in the will of God. God will be present in our lives. We won't want for this presence that so many think only happens in a sanctuary. That God can meet us even in a pasture with a whole bunch of sheep, which is the parable, right? That God can be with us when we gather in his name to call upon him, to seek to understand better what it is to live in his will. So as I close, I would ask that wherever you're at, if you're in a church home group, that someone would segue in some way into the discussion questions that you can find on the Sermon Companion. And then after you're done with your gathering time, if you're able to eat with each other, that'd be great. If you're able to fellowship, that would be awesome. But then pray, and pray to close your time, but also spend time praying with each other and share with each other what it is that you think you could do in your little areas, and see maybe as a small church group what you could do for your neighborhood, what you could do for your neighbors. Something as basic as sharing diapers with somebody might change their week. Maybe it's simply helping that sweet old neighbor down the road get their prescription pills because they're afraid to go out because of a pandemic. Maybe it's simply asking that neighbor that you disagree with to share their opinions, and then the moment you let them share and you listen, like James talks about in the book of James, a relationship could form, and we can continue to bear witness and be ambassadors and be the church that we're called to be. Wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, I appreciate your patience in this time, but I would continue to challenge you to seek to do good things, to be the church that we've been called to be, to join with us when we come up with more unique opportunities now that we have policies and we can do things legally, to be the church, to love best, to love God with our everything, to love our neighbor as ourselves. Until next time, thank you for tuning in next to a busy, loud road as we're feeding kids tacos. I'll see you soon.